In this module, we're going to focus on the topic of qualifying prospects, and we're going to talk to you about why that's important, how it can help you to improve your sales results, and we will give you a process that you can implement immediately to help you to screen out the bad prospects. What is qualifying? Well, basically, qualifying a sales prospect is really assessing them in two key areas. First, you're basically sizing them up for how well they fit with what you have to offer, or that's what you should be doing when you're qualifying them. Do they even need what you sell? And if they do, actually looking then deeper, is it more of a want or is it more of a need? But then it's also looking at how likely they will be to purchase from you. Do they love what you have but have a zero possibility of ever spending any money with you? That's not real great. And you want to be able to get those prospects identified and disqualify them. You primarily perform qualifying in two ways, and it's really mainly in one way, which is, well, actually, the minor way that you might do some qualifying is by doing some research. There's a particular individual or company that you want to sell to. You might look them up without even spending any time prospecting to them, and you might be able to qualify them at a certain level in terms of identifying they're the right size or meet some of the criteria. So you might do that in performing some research. But the primary way that you qualify a prospect is when you're talking to them, asking them good questions. And we're going to arm you with a bunch of good questions to help you with qualifying here today. So this is really one of the most important steps of prospecting and being a salesperson. In fact, a lot of salespeople often say, if I could improve one area, I would want to be a better closer. And people always think that there's ways to become more persuasive in closing and more manipulative and persuasive. But the reality is that what we often do is we fall into the trap of selling to prospects that just really don't fit with what we have to offer. And there are good prospects out there, and we just waste valuable time talking to bad ones, and that time could have been spent finding the good prospects. And that wasted time is extremely valuable. You only have 40 hours in the work week. There's nothing you can do to add more hours to the week. I mean, you can work beyond 40 hours, but there's really only so many hours that you can spend interfacing with prospects, and every hour, every minute spent with a bad prospect is time wasted. And to be successful, you really want to get the most out of that valuable time. The other thing is that your control is somewhat limited, right? I mean, you can't bully a prospect into moving forward and force them to say yes. So you can't control the prospects that you talk to. And here's kind of a play on words here, if you can follow me. Let me take a step back. You can't control the prospects that you talk to, meaning you can't make them say yes. But what you can control are which prospects you talk to, meaning you can say, I'm going to walk away from this prospect. So you can control that. And that can be very powerful, because if you are able to determine which prospects to walk away from and which prospects to walk towards and spend your valuable time with, that can improve. That is something that you can control. And being judicious in that area and having scrutiny and having intelligence around your decision making can improve your results. It basically improves your deal management, your pipeline management. Those deals where you're at the last day of the quarter or the year, and your boss is pressuring you to close it harder, make it happen, and there's nothing you can do, and you feel like, oh, if you were only a better closer, and you can't close the deal. The reality is that if you were a better qualifier and you built, that would lead you to building a better and more healthy pipeline of better quality deals. You're not going to find yourself in that situation, because those deals will just close themselves. And really, closing should be the easiest thing that you do. The other thing is that knowledge is power in any aspect of life. And when you qualify prospects, you're going to be asking good questions. And when you ask good questions, you uncover valuable information, and that makes you a more powerful salesperson, managing the deal and whatnot. You're going to uncover pain. You're going to produce better leads. The last point here is that relationships are key. When you qualify a prospect, you're actually going to make a better impression because you're going to seem more polished. You're going to seem more respectful. You're going to, instead of you pushing your product, you're going to be asking them questions that show them that you respect their decision and not pushing something on them that they don't need. This is going to decrease their guardedness, help you to build rapport. So as you can see here, qualifying really positions you to be a much better salesperson than if you don't or you skip this step. Let's look at a qualified prospect versus an unqualified prospect, because this will kind of lay the groundwork for you to identify which prospects, or this will lay the groundwork for you to implement a system to qualify better. So let's look at a qualified prospect, and you'll notice there's an instruction here that says there needs to be a medium to strong level of in each of these four categories, meaning you need to be good, medium to good in these four areas. And the first one is the need to purchase. So someone actually needs to buy what you have, and an example of this might be their current system is breaking, so they must replace it with something else. Their current contract is expiring. They are making a move, and because of the move, they'll need to purchase something new. Those are examples of needs. You want to kind of separate the needs from wants. If we just bought a car 2 years ago and we're out and a new model came out, we wanted to go look at the new model, we may love the new model of vehicle, but we just bought a car, so we just don't really need one. It still smells new, so we want a new one, but we don't need one. The authority to purchase means that you're dealing with someone who can say yes, and even if you're not dealing with someone who is the decision maker, the decision maker is at least knowledgeable about the opportunity that you're working on. So you might be dealing with an influencer or a coach, but the person that says yes is in the loop on what's going on. So you need to have the authority to purchase at a good to medium level. The ability to purchase. So does someone have the funding or money to purchase what you're selling? And the last one is the genuine intent to purchase. So I may have all those top three categories, but I've already determined that I'm going to purchase from someone else, and I'm just talking to you to get a price. That means I intend to purchase, but I don't have a genuine intent to purchase from you. And that's important to find out, and we'll talk about how to find that out. But that can make the deal not qualified. So basically, as you can see there, if there's a question mark in only one area, it's not a really qualified opportunity or prospect. So let's look at a unqualified prospect, and as we mentioned, they can basically just have one of these, and these four categories are basically the opposite of what we just went through, but they don't really need to purchase what you sell. They don't really have any authority. They're at maybe a manager level, and they can't really sign off on anything. They don't have the ability to purchase, meaning either one thing, they don't have money, so the budget's wiped out and there's no getting additional funds in any creative way, or the ability to purchase might mean that they're tied up in a contract. So they have the money and they want to do something, but they're just locked in. It's like buying a cell phone. You're locked into an agreement and can't do anything for another year. And as we mentioned, there's just no real intent to purchase. Maybe they're window shopping. Maybe they've already determined to buy from someone else. And like I said, a question mark in only one of those areas makes it an unqualified prospect. So let's talk about some examples of common unqualified prospects that you can run into, and this is we'll go through four types, and this is the no need to purchase. So you're dealing with someone, they have the authority to purchase. You're dealing with the VP of a department. They have the ability to purchase. Money is available and allocated to this area. They intend to purchase. Their intent with you is genuine. They're not talking to anybody else. You're the only company they're talking to. But in this example, the current system that they have is working okay, or working pretty good, meaning there's no pain. So let's say you sell some sort of software application, and the one that they have was built in-house, and it's working. It doesn't break. It provides some decent functionality. The one that you sell blows the current one out of the water in terms of all these bells and whistles. But you know what? They don't need it, because what they have is working okay and great, or good to great. There's no pain. So this is an example of more of a want. They would love to have what you sell. You're able to get them to a demo. You're able to get a lot of good questions in the meeting. And so this is this happens in real life. You get a lot of people in the room. They're asking all good questions and a lot of oohs and ahs, and you think that it's a done deal because of all that. But at the end of the day, did you really explore? Do they really need what we have? How are things going with the current system? Why would they make a change? So that's a very common unqualified prospect that we can run into. Another one is the no authority to purchase unqualified prospect. And so in this case, they do have a need. The current system is cumbersome. It's breaking. It's outdated. They have the ability, budget's been approved and allocated. They have the genuine intent, but you're dealing with someone at a manager level, and the VP that needs to sign off is not anywhere around. They have no idea that you're even talking. You end up getting a meeting, and you spend 2 hours showing a demonstration to the manager, and the VP has no idea what's going on. The VP is favorable to another company, and in this case, it's not a dead deal. It's just not a really qualified opportunity. I mean, if you treated it as one, you might put it in your pipeline and tell your boss that you're going to close it in this quarter. But the reality is until that VP gets in the loop, it's not qualified. And so this isn't one to walk away from. What you just need to do is identify it and find a way to get the VP involved. Either get the coach, treat the prospect that you're dealing with as a coach, and get them to move you up the organization. Get an interview, get a meeting with the VP, get the VP into the demonstration next time, either before the demonstration happens or do another demonstration. And so that's when that can become a qualified prospect. Another example is the no ability to purchase. This is another unqualified prospect. And so in this case, again, we have the pain. The intent to do something is genuine. They're not talking to anybody else. The authority to purchase is there. We're dealing with the VP. But the reality is, in this case, the business just has no funding, or the business just purchased something in the area that you provided. Think if so this can happen a lot. There was a big initiative, and they purchased something, and there was a lot of money put into that, and there was a lot of political capital spent, meaning someone put their neck out online, said, let's do this, let's purchase this. And so even knowing it might have been the wrong decision, they can't do anything for a period of time. They have to let the dust settle. So they just purchase something. It's kind of like buying a car. As we already mentioned, you can't justify going out and buying another one. Your neighbors would look at you in a crazy way. And so it's the same thing like in an organization, or they might be locked into a long-term agreement. No intent to purchase. This is the one that's often easily overlooked. So in this case, they need something. We're dealing with the right person. The money is there. Everything's freed up. But you know what? The genuine intent is missing. So what this often looks like is you might get an inbound lead from a company, and they want your pricing. They want you to do a demo, or they want you to do a proposal. And you fly around, and you spend all these hours, and you're like, wow, what a great deal. It just came in through the web. We must be doing good marketing, right? But the reality is that you're coming in, they've already been talking to another company for 3 months, and they've done all sorts of stuff, and before they purchase from that company, they need to get another couple of proposals. If for one thing, either to do negotiating with the company that they're going to buy from, or just to show that they've done their due diligence. before pulling the trigger. And so what you're doing is you're wasting your time to help this company out. It's 100% waste of time. You're dead out of the water. And the reality is that if you don't ask the right qualifying questions, this might go undetected, and you end up putting it in your pipeline, and you end up spending some political capital with management thinking you're going to close it, and then it doesn't close. So there's some questions you can ask to see where are you at, who else is the prospect talking to, and so in this case, in this example, the genuine intent to do business with you was not there. They were just wanting to get a price. And in this case, you might not necessarily want to be rude or just completely walk away. You just want to protect your time. So they want a price. Okay, give them a verbal price over the phone. Give them a quote that you can put together in 10 minutes in one document. But don't flip over backwards for this prospect and waste your time. So those are 4 very common unqualified prospects that you're going to run into and could potentially waste your time with. Here's a 2-step qualifying process to identify those and eliminate any time wasted with those. Step 1 is pre-qualifying, and you do this primarily when you do this. The primary goal of this is just to make sure that it makes sense to keep talking, right? Does it even make sense for us to have a conversation? So this basically will take place in the first contact. So you might meet someone at a networking event, and the next step might be just to have a deeper conversation there in person or on another day. And so you want to pre-qualify them to see, does it even make sense for me to give you a call? Does it even make sense for me to drive over and have a cup and pop by your office for us to meet to have a cup of coffee? It's basically saying I'm not seeing if the deal is real, but is it even in the general area so that it's worth both of our time? You don't want to waste their time either out of politeness. So we'll talk about how to pre-qualify, but then the deeper step is step 2, which is true qualifying. And you basically, this is to identify, is the deal for real? And this will take place in your first real meeting, your first real appointment. So one way to look at this is you might pre-qualify on a cold call, in an email, at a networking event, and then you deeper qualify step 2 in the appointment that you go on. And so let's dig into pre-qualifying in a little bit more detail. You can focus in 3 key areas when you do pre-qualifying. You want to identify the current state, so what's going on. There's another training module where we talk about the ideal prospect, and we talk about some environmental details. And so what's going on in terms of the current systems or current processes. What does the organization look like from a people standpoint? What are the current vendors they're doing business with? What are the current contracts? I mean, realistic pre-qualifying questions that are good. If you're selling digital, if you're a digital marketing agency, you're talking to a marketing VP. Are you guys currently working with a digital marketing agency? Right. The answer, there's lots of answers that could come out of that, but yes doesn't mean that they're not disqualified, but you might find out who they're working with. You might find out they don't have anybody, which means it definitely makes sense. But when they say, yeah, we're working with such and such, and when you find out who the current vendors are, you can identify, are you locked in any contracts? Are you open? Are you available to work with other vendors? So identifying the current state, what's going on? And then to take that one step deeper or further is to identify the level of satisfaction. Okay, you're using these systems, you're using these vendors. How are things going? How do you feel? I mean, are things great, good, okay? You might have some probing questions there to identify if there's some pain. The third area is to identify if there are some organizational details. Are you talking to the right person? A great question to ask is, are you the right person for me to be talking to? Do you we'll actually we'll show you some questions here in a second. So let's just jump right into that. Um, for the current state, your goal is to identify what the prospect is doing in the area where your product impacts, right? So you don't want to just have general conversations about their whole operation. You'd like to be very focused in the area that you can help with. What current systems, processes, vendors are they using? So some example questions are, what are you currently using today to manage inventory, your inventory? These are specific examples, not to be used in any situation, but when did you all, so then a follow-up question to that is, when did you all implement that system? If they say, oh, we're using this, that, this and such, and then, are you locked in any contract with that current provider? So those are some good pre-qualifying questions around the current state. And what you're looking for because you're trying to assess the prospect, is you're looking for so you can kind of measure what their responses are. So if the prospect isn't doing anything in the area where you help, that's a strong response, meaning you're very qualified. Medium might be the prospect's current contract is expiring soon, but they're in one. Weak would be they recently bought something, meaning they can't make any changes soon, or might be that they're locked into a long-term agreement, is a weak level in terms of qualification. So the second area was the level of satisfaction, so you might follow that up, and your goal is to identify how things are going. Are they good, great, good, okay, or could be better? So some follow-up questions might be, how do you feel about the level of service from your current provider? How do you feel about your ability to manage inventory levels with your current system? Is there any functionality you need that your current provider doesn't provide? And so assessing the feedback the qualification's strong if things could be better, it's medium if things are just okay, and it's kind of weak if their responses come back that everything's really good. Organizational details, you're trying to identify if the prospect is in the right area of the organization. They don't necessarily need to be the decision maker, but at least are they in the right general area to where you can at least it makes sense to have a conversation. So some example questions might be, are you involved in the management of the supply chain? If you're talking about something regarding the supply chain, is this an area that falls under your responsibility? And if it doesn't fall under them, is this an area that impacts you at all? Because maybe they might be a frontline user or an influencer, and so they might not be the decision maker, but they might be in the general area. And if that's the case, you still might have a conversation with them to gather some great information. But to assess the feedback, if the prospect's the key person, then that's strong. If they're in the general area but they're not the key person, decision maker, then that's a medium response. And then if the prospect has nothing to do with what you're dealing with, that's weak, of course. So that's pre-qualifying, and you're probably going to try to look for some pain and see if you're dealing with the right person. And then that will tell the responses to those will determine, okay, it makes sense for us to at least have a conversation. So you get to the conversation, and that could be the form of a meeting, whatnot. And then you can do your deeper qualifying. And so at this point, you're going to look in those 4 areas that we outlined earlier. So, is there a need to purchase? Is there an ability to purchase? Do they have the authority to purchase? And is the genuine intent to purchase there? And so if we look at that, let's look at each of those one at a time, kind of go through give you some example questions. But for the need to purchase, the goal is to identify, is there a true need? Do they truly need what we have? Because at this point, you're probably identifying that they at least want it if you've pre-qualified them. But now we're trying to separate the need from want. And so some example questions might be, what happens if you don't end up purchasing, from us or what we're talking about? What would that look like? So you're kind of identifying. Does it look bad if they don't purchase anything? And if it does, then that means they're qualified. If things are still just okay, then it's more of a want. What improvements will you see if you move forward with this purchase? What happens? We know what we could help you to do, but get them to say in their own words what they think the improvements would be. Is there a date when the purchase needs to be made by? this is kind of trying to get to like a compelling event, identifying is there something tied to this? Because, for example, if you can think about it, our current contract expires at the end of the year, so we have to have something in place by that date. That really paints a picture that it's a need. It's not a want, it's a need. So if you can find a compelling event, then it's a need. What happens if the purchase is not made by that date? So if your contract expires and you don't have it up and running, the new system by that date, what does that look like? Maybe it's no big deal. Maybe they kind of fumble along, and in that case it's not maybe a truly qualified deal. What's the time frame that the project needs to work along? That also can show you how much they really need what you're selling. So those are some examples. There's a lot of others that you could ask around the need. You could go back to some questions around your pain points. What's the identifying if there are some pains that they are experiencing, and what are the impacts of those pains. And we talk about pain in a different training module. But assessing some of the feedback to those questions, if there's a noticeable negative impact if they don't purchase from you, then that's a very strong level of qualification. If the prospect needs to purchase something by a certain date, that again is strong. If the prospect if there's a noticeable positive impact with the purchase, so we're more focusing on the positive than the negative, then maybe a medium. And then it's weak if the prospect can do just fine without purchasing something. The authority to purchase, our goal here is to identify if the person that we're dealing with has purchasing power. And so what you don't want to do, this can be one that people often get scared about asking questions about and probing on. They just kind of want to assume that the person that does have power. Because a way that you don't want to go about this is to ask the prospect, do you have the power to make this happen? Or are you the decision maker? Asking are you the decision maker isn't a great question, because one, it could make someone defensive if they're not, or two, they might say yes and they really aren't. So here are some questions to go about it another way. So one is you could ask, what is the decision-making process? And so that they might say, well, we have to submit this paperwork. And then you can take that and you can say, well, what's next? What happens then? And where does it go from there? And who's involved from there? And you can map it out one step at a time. And what that's going to lead to is that's going to shed light on who the actual decision maker is, and which might be the person who actually signs at the end of that process, signs the deal. Which if you don't do that, they could be a coach or an influencer, and they might say, well, I'm the decision maker, but they're really not. I mean, it's really someone in a different office that is actually the ultimate decision maker. What parties are involved in the decision making? What functional areas are impacted by the purchase? So that's one that you might forget to ask, but maybe you're dealing with finance, but IT has a big say because they're the ones that are going to support the purchase. So you need to find that out. Who's the ultimate decision maker? That's a decent question to ask in place of, are you the decision maker? Who is the person that will sign the agreement or contract? So assessing the answers to those, if the prospect that you're dealing with is the only one needed, then that's really strong. If the prospect makes the decision but has to get approval, it's a medium level qualification. And if the prospect has no formal, does not make the final decision and doesn't really have an influence over it, then it's weak. The ability to purchase, it gets around sort of the funding or freedom to make a purchase, and so you basically want to identify if there's primarily money or if they're not locked into an agreement. So some questions here, and this is again another one that someone might be uncomfortable about asking, but because you don't want to say, well, first of all, you might think that a prospect might not appreciate you asking them how much they want to spend, because if you say, well, how much do you want to spend on this, they're probably not going to want to answer it because they know that their answer is going to impact how much you charge them. So we can often get a little scared around asking if they have money or how much they want to spend. But here are some other ways to diplomatically go about it. You could say, is there a budget approved for this purchase or project? What's the budget range that the project needs to fall within? That's kind of a very soft, tricky way to kind of get that in there, because you're not really calling them out. You give them the freedom to give a range, which might make them more comfortable, or might make them answer the question without being so guarded with a really direct price question. Have funds been allocated to this purchase? What budget or department will this purchase be made under? Are there other purchases that this funding may end up being used for? Meaning that's sort of like, there's funding approved for this project, but maybe another department might take those funds. You might be competing internally with another project. How does this project fit with other initiatives from a priority standpoint? So there might be a bunch of different things that the company wants to purchase. Yes, there is money available, but is it allocated and set aside and not going to be touched by anybody else? Those are pretty important questions when you're really trying to qualify. And so assessing those answers from it's strong if funds are available, approved, and allocated. Medium if funds are available, but you don't know if they're really approved and allocated. And then it's weak if there are no funds available, of course. Now let's look at the intent to purchase, and so this is the tricky one. This is the one where maybe they're just kind of kicking tires, or already going to purchase from someone else. So you want to identify, are they for real? Do they have the genuine intent that if everything works out and everything else is good, that they're going to purchase from you? And so here are some questions to ask. Why did you take time out of your schedule to meet with us? Why did you contact us? And that might sound attacking, but there's nothing wrong with sitting down in a meeting and saying, "Hey, listen, I know why I want to meet with you, but I would just love to know, why did you choose time out of your calendar to meet with us?" Nothing wrong with saying that at all. Identifying if they're looking at anybody else. This could be another one that someone might be scared to ask because they don't want to bring up the idea that there's other people out there that the prospect can buy from, or be nosy. But a real direct question of, what other options are you considering? And maybe it's competition. Maybe another option that they're considering is to do nothing. How far along are you with talking with the other options with the other companies that they're looking at? That's a really important question. If they've been talking to them for 3 months and they're just not talking to you, they might not have the genuine intent. How do you feel about their solution? What do you like about their solution? What do you not like about their solution? How does their solution compare with what we have to offer? Is there a reason why you would choose us over them? If you had to make a decision today, which way would you go? Now, you wouldn't want to go through all of those one straight in a row, but you could either pick a few or go through all of them, but have some discussion in between. But those will feel out, is this person for real? Because if they're just looking for a price, you're going to find it out by asking those questions. If they're honest with you, if they lie to you, if you ask the questions but they lie to you, there's nothing you can do about that. But not asking those questions is where it's shame on you. So assessing those answers, if the prospect is serious about making a purchase, it's strong. If the prospect is only talking to you, sometimes that's the case, that's great. Medium, if the prospect is talking to other vendors but favorable toward your company. And it gets weak if the prospect sees all options as equal and leading towards someone else, and the prospect does not have definitive plans to purchase anything. Those are some reasons that it could be weak. So I know that's the process that we provide. It's 2 steps, but the first thing that you need to keep in mind is that not everybody is a good prospect, and that's okay. There's no reason to get upset if someone says I'm not interested, or they hang up on you, or whatnot. There's a small piece of the entire market that fits well and it's the right time. You need to find those people, and you need to you need to ask good qualifying questions to find them. A good prospect will have the need, authority, funding, and interest and intent in what you have to offer. Time is limited, so qualifying so that you spend your valuable time with the best prospects is key to your success. It'll help you to build a better pipeline. It'll help you to be a better closer. You can use this two-step process to separate the bad prospects from good prospects with pre-qualifying them at first, just to identify, does it even make sense for us to talk? Because some people will schedule appointments with prospects that don't even make sense, that aren't even anywhere close to a fit. So forget about spending months chasing deals and getting deals in your pipeline. What about that 2 hours that you spend on an appointment? A half an hour getting there, an hour meeting, and a half hour back. For prospects that you could have pre-qualified out. So by improving the quality of your prospects, it'll lead to you producing more leads. The leads will be better quality, and you'll be better able to manage your deals, manage your pipeline, and close better. So that's the module on qualifying. Hope that helps. Good luck and happy hunting.